Hello viewers, we are here with our International Women's Day special program. Today we have our honorable guest Mr. Chris Howard. As part of the Department of Justice, United States of America, he serves as the resident legal advisor at the US Embassy in Dhaka. Chris, welcome to our show. We want to know first from you that how do you enjoy Bangladesh?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Being in Bangladesh has been a tremendous experience, personally and professionally. The people of Bangladesh have been incredibly welcoming to me and my family. I have met, trained, and partnered with hundreds of Bangladesh investigators, prosecutors, and judges who I found are committed to improving the criminal justice system here in Bangladesh. I tell people that it is an exciting time to be in Bangladesh, and the food here is delicious as well.
Oh, thank you, thank you. America is a big country and you born and raised there. Do you find any similarities with Bangladesh?
It is a big country, but I'm from a small town. I'm from a small town in Indiana, which is towards the middle of the United States. And it's surrounded by a lot of farmland and hardworking people. And there are absolutely similarities between there and here. The people that I grew up with, they care about living in a community that's safe. And so too do the people of Bangladesh. In both areas, they care about their children growing up and having better opportunities that they did when they were children. And in both areas, I see that neighbors are willing to come together and work together, particularly in difficult times.
I think these similarities all over the world,
Absolutely.
Not only in Bangladesh or America. As far we know, you graduated from Clemson University, South Carolina, and then went to Berkeley School of Law, University of California. You are also a federal attorney, and in Bangladesh, you engaged with judges, lawyers, and investigators and investigative agencies also. What kind of process improvement do you see in it?
So I'm a federal prosecutor in the United States. I work as part of the United States Department of Justice. And I'm here in Bangladesh as part of the Department of Justice's Office of Overseas Prosecutorial Development, Assistance, and Training. It's known sometimes as OPDAT. The OPDAT in the Department of Justice has more than 60 overseas prosecutors like me. We're located in more than 40 countries worldwide.
40 countries?
And we work in those countries.
It is third world countries or Western or?
Well, it's countries in which it makes sense to build up the criminal justice system, in which there is an agreement with those host countries and the United States. So what we're doing is helping to build the capacity, not only here in Bangladesh, but those other countries as well.
Can you tell us some name?
Yeah, specifically here in Bangladesh, our work area includes everything from drug and human trafficking. It includes anti-corruption, gender-based violence, anti-terrorism, and then we work with judges as well. But the key is that we partner with those host countries. What we don't do is come to those countries and tell them what they should be doing or the way to do it. Rather, what we do is bring subject matter experts and we present a way to do things using the experience that we've found in the United States. What we're trying to do is give investigators, prosecutors, and judges the skills and the training to be able to deliver justice more effectively in their countries. Let me give you some examples because you asked for some. So specifically for investigators, what we'll do is provide training on how to conduct effective interviewing techniques, whether that's interviewing a witness or a victim or a subject of an investigation. We also provide training on digital evidence, how to identify it, how to use it,
Digital
and how to
world
preserve
is now more and more important.
It's incredibly important, and electronic evidence as well. But we also are pushing and advancing towards conducting financial investigations. We want to work our way up that ladder of culpability to get those leaders and organizers of criminal activity. So that's what we're partnering with investigators. but we also work with prosecutors as well. And as a prosecutor, this is something that I feel strongly about.
You know better.
So when we partner with prosecutors, particularly here in Bangladesh, we train them on trial advocacy skills. We want them to be effective advocates when they step foot in that courtroom and they're representing the people of Bangladesh and they're representing victims of often violent crimes. Now, we also work with judges as well. For judges, we work with the government of Bangladesh, the Ministry of Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs, and the Supreme Court of Bangladesh in drafting model orders that judges can use in their courtroom. And we also work to develop sentencing guidelines for the criminal justice system here. And we've worked to develop bench books that judges can use from the bench that serve as a practical and useful resource in areas like gender-based violence and money laundering. So that's a little bit about the process implements that we're working on.
You know, the 8th March is the International Women's Day. Do you think a Bangladeshi woman is behind or ahead in some respect when it comes to getting justice than American women? Or is it the same?
Well, International Women's Day is an important reminder, not only of the progress that has been made, but the tremendous progress that still needs to be made. And that's true in America, and that's true in Bangladesh as well. The President of the United States has identified gender-based violence as a priority for his administration. As a father of 2 daughters, I completely understand why. But the United States and the Department of Justice is committed to partnering with Bangladesh and partnering with countries throughout the world to ensure that every young girl, whether her name is Samaya or Samantha, has the opportunity to reach her full potential. Because when that happens, we're all better off for it.
Please, how do you evaluate gender-based violence in Bangladesh? What do you think Bangladesh should do to control them?
Well, it's an incredibly important topic, and the way I think about it is you start with the 3 Ps. You have to prevent it, you have to protect those survivors who have the courage to step forward, and then you have to prosecute those wrongdoers. So it comes down to prevention, protection, and prosecution. But the first step is recognizing the importance of gender-based violence and the seriousness of that issue. Across the world, 1 woman is murdered, is killed by her partner every 11 minutes. That is an alarming statistic, and it's unacceptable. Here in Bangladesh, a 2015 national survey of Bangladesh married women found that more than 80% of those married women had suffered domestic violence. More recently, as we are increasingly spending more and more of our time online, but so for many Bangladesh young women and girls, they're finding that the digital space is not a safe space. A 2017 survey of Bangladesh female internet users reported over 70% experiencing cybercrimes. So the first step in really addressing gender-based violence is identifying how serious an issue it is. But it doesn't stop there. Next, it's important to protect those who again have the courage to step forward and to speak out. Often the abuser is an intimate partner, perhaps a boyfriend or a husband. And often the victim, that survivor, is financially dependent on the abuser. So we have to recognize the courage it takes for that person being abused to step forward. And throughout Bangladesh, there are victim support centers. There are one-stop crisis centers. There are shelters in place to provide survivors with the resources that they need to be protected. Here in Dhaka, we partner with the Dhaka Metropolitan Police's Women's Support Investigative Division. It is an all-female unit led by a female that has a facility that's able to temporarily provide shelter and much-needed psychological counseling to those survivors and victims of gender-based violence. But more needs to be done. And certainly, it doesn't stop there. It's also important to conduct a thorough investigation, because as law enforcement, we want to gather evidence not just sufficient to arrest someone, but to ultimately convict those wrongdoers. In our trainings and our programmings in the Department of Justice, we advocate an approach that says you start by believing the victim. And what that means is you listen to what the victim has to say about that terrible experience. And then you look for evidence that corroborates that victim's account. Now, that evidence can be digital, it can be electronic, it can also be physical evidence, and it can be other witnesses. So often, the survivors of gender-based violence aren't making their first report to law enforcement. They're telling a friend, a neighbor, a family member. Well, those individuals that they're reaching out to, those are important witnesses in the course of the investigation. Now, once a thorough investigation has been done, the prosecutors play an important role. Because at the end of the day, it is critically important to hold wrongdoers accountable in the criminal justice system, to prosecute them successfully. When people see that abusers are facing real consequences for their choices, that's going to have an effect. It's going to help build the trust between law enforcement and the community that they serve. So, it is a difficult progress, it is a difficult issue, but those are some of the steps that we at the Department of Justice are taking and partnering with Bangladesh.
It is often seen in Bangladesh, especially for women who have to go through various forms of harassment. How can victims or witnesses get protection from judiciary, lawyers, investigators, the investigative agencies? What's your opinion?
When we talk about protecting victims, and witnesses, but that also means protecting them from re-traumatization that can occur in the course of the investigation and the prosecution. We conduct trainings that focus on investigators and prosecutors conducting trauma-informed, victim-centered approach to those investigations. Let me give you an example. When you interview a victim or a witness, how you phrase those questions can suggest to that individual whether you believe them, whether you're blaming them for the terrible events that happened to them, or whether you're judging them for what happened. Now think about it. How likely is it that victim who has had the courage to come forward and is now talking to an investigator who they believe doesn't believe them, is judging them? How likely is it that that victim is going to attend court? And here in Bangladesh, court proceedings can last several years. How likely is it that that survivor is going to cooperate in the investigation going forward? So those sorts of tools are incredibly important when we think about the successful investigations and prosecutions. And again, as a prosecutor, we believe it's incumbent upon prosecutors to play an important role in that as well. And so here's what we do in our trainings. We talk to prosecutors and engage with them on the importance of preparing witnesses for court. When you go to court and you testify in front of an open courtroom, it is a stressful, anxious period. Now, when you are prepared, when you have a prosecutor who meets with you beforehand, who's willing to answer your questions, well, that can help reduce some of that stress, some of that anxiety. Because at the end of the day, no victim, no survivor should feel like they're alone in this process.
In Bangladesh, you monitor various cases. What limitations do you see in it? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I've spent much of my career in courtrooms, and I look at the prosecutors and the judges in Bangladesh, and I see that they face incredibly daunting caseloads, high amount of cases that they're responsible for. But yet they're dedicated public servants, the ones that work with the Department of Justice. and they work often under difficult circumstances. We're working with them to provide strategies for judges to more efficiently manage their dockets, to implement sentencing guidelines, and to take steps to really move the adjudication process in a fair and timely manner.
How do you evaluate Bangladesh judicial system? What is the difference with America?
So one of the things that the Department of Justice has long advocated for here in Bangladesh is a career prosecution service. I'm a federal prosecutor in the United States. I only do criminal cases, and I only represent one client, the United States of America. Here in Bangladesh, it's a little bit different. The prosecutors here are private attorneys who are contracted to do prosecutions, but also do private cases as well to supplement their income. I'm hopeful that eventually in Bangladesh you will see a career prosecution service.
In government prosecution service?
That's correct. And there's other differences as well. In the United States, most of our criminal trials involve a jury. That is a selection of random individuals who come into court and decide the guilt or innocence of an individual after listening to all the evidence. Here in Bangladesh, it's a judge who makes that determination. In the United States, in the federal court where I practice, over 90% of our cases result in a conviction. The majority of those are a result of plea agreements. Here in Bangladesh, plea agreements aren't used. So those are some of the differences, but there's more similarities than there are differences. There are more that binds us together than there are that separate us. You know, I see some of the same challenges in the US that I see in Bangladesh. Issues about maintaining trust and developing relationship between the community and between law enforcement. Issues about protecting witnesses, about protecting victims. Issues about ensuring that justice is done, but at the same time protecting the rights of the accused. These are challenges in America, in Bangladesh, and throughout the world in criminal justice systems.
Can you please share your good memories of working with our audience?
There's a lot of great memories. I've been in Bangladesh for a little more than a year and have really developed some great partnerships and relationships with people. One of the things that stands out is each year the U.S. Department of Justice sponsors a moot court competition for law students throughout Bangladesh. Hundreds of law students compete in this competition. And then we fund the top teams from that competition to go to Washington, D.C. and to compete internationally from law schools across the world. Watching those law students, I am amazed at their talent and their poise. And I notice that who usually wins the top advocate, the top competitor among all those Bangladesh law students just about every year? It's usually a female. A female law student in Bangladesh. So I can't help but believe that the future of Bangladesh and its legal system and its criminal justice system is going to be a bright future. When I see those sons and daughters of Bangladesh and the tremendous talent and ability that those future lawyers and those future leaders have.
You already said you are here more than 1 year. My last question is, have you learned any Bangla word?
I know about 12 Bangla words.
12 Bangla words.
My daughters go to Bangla class, so they certainly know more. But there's some key words like dandabad, tikache.
Dandabad, tikache.
Ache.
Great.
So there are some Bangla words that I know, yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, I want to thank the viewers for taking the time. I want to thank everyone at Independent TV for inviting me. And I want to also take a moment to appreciate the strong partnership between the U.S. Department of Justice, the United States, and the people of Bangladesh. Thank you all. Dandabad.
Viewers, it is very thoughtful and valuable discussion. Mr. Chris Howard has shared his experience. See you next time. Till then, bye-bye.